Hey guys, Nick here with Live 3 and 5 Homesteading. This is not staged, but about an hour after I shot the intro for our channel and was trying to set up to give you guys a review of our incubator where we're trying to hatch chicken eggs, we lost power. So that's why our digital meter is blank. So this is going to be kind of a two-parter. I guess I'm going to have to set up the generator, which was a topic I wanted to cover at some point down the line. But I guess I'm going to have to do that because we've been without power at this point for about hour and a half. So I want to do this fairly quickly. Hopefully the chicken eggs will be okay. I've heard that it's a problem if you lose power for a few hours or more. Not really sure what a few hours means. So first off, I'm going to set up the generator. I've already dragged this heavy beast out. It's a 7,000 watt, nominally a DeWalt generator. Really under the hood it's a Generac. We mailed in the warranty and the warranty went to Generac. So there's a fuel supply I have to turn on. If you don't yet have a home generator and you're thinking about investing in one, I would highly recommend getting one that can run most of your circuits, so you don't have to run individual 120 volt extension cords. That's pretty inconvenient. The way we operate is we run this 7,000 watt generator on this 240 volt convenience cord. Which is run to a generator inlet. You can see it's kind of like, almost like a reverse washing machine or other appliance plug. That plugs into the male end in the inlet. Highly recommend you have a qualified electrician do this. It's very important that you have an interlock installed, which I'll have to show you. So, idle control is off. I've never found that works on this model. For anyone who's interested, it's a DXGNR7000. Again, I don't think it was actually made by DeWalt. Fuel's on. There's a choke I have to throw. And it's probably unnecessary. There is a pull start on this, but there's also an electric start. This is probably unnecessary, but whenever I'm dealing with this much electricity, I like to use a wooden handle tool, so I'm not touching the death maker. So to run, our electrical panel. So this is the interlock. This is the part that's critical, guys, because for those of you that don't know, essentially what we're doing is we're back feeding through a 50 amp breaker. If you don't have this interlock and you forget to shut off your grid power first and you turn the generator on so it's feeding your hotbar, essentially you're gonna push juice back into the grid. And if there are any linemen around working on the power outage, you could potentially kill somebody. So that's why you want to do this. And again, I would use an electrician. Shut off the grid power, throw the breaker, and then... All right. Groovy. So, let's swing back up to what I wanted to cover before I was so rudely interrupted by the power outage. hand things off to my lovely wife to do the filming. Thank you. Alright guys, so thankfully it looks like our incubator held all the settings. I found we have not used this in several years. So originally where I was going to start this presentation, not planning on having to get power back on first, was just to talk about this setup. I honestly cannot remember the exact make or model on this. I think at the time we were given this even a few years ago before the inflation. This was a fairly expensive unit, so a couple $100 range, maybe more. It's got a 48 egg capacity. It held the settings from the last run of eggs we did 5 or 6 years ago, so it should definitely hold them through a power outage. Like I said, it was still on day something of the prior run. So, like I said, we have zero money into this. I think I might have a different thought on whether this was worth it if I had to pay $200 or $300 for this unit. If you're just starting out with chickens for the first time, don't recommend this. I would recommend going to a feed store, or if you want to order online. I've had good luck multiple times with Murray McMurray Hatchery. Very healthy birds, lots of different breeds you can choose from. But if you've already done that, you've already got chickens and a rooster that you own or one that you can borrow, I would definitely recommend this as a fun project. It's also a good backup plan if you're of a preparedness mindset. You saw we just had to use a generator to keep these eggs alive. I'm somebody who thinks that it makes sense to prepare for things not always going according to plan. And yes, if you have chickens and a rooster, in theory, you should be able to make new chickens naturally. Not all hens are great at being broody. This is a good backup. Obviously, the downside to this versus a hen that's going to do it naturally is you have to make sure you have power. The process is not a lot of work. So you can see we're on day 2. It's a 21-day incubation for chicken eggs. I forget duck eggs off the top of my head, though I want to say that's longer. This particular incubator, the cups are designed so that they could facilitate either chickens or ducks, but the temperatures and length of time and possibly humidity are different. I've never done duck eggs. You would want to do your research. I'm going to risk cracking the lid just to show you. We've got 24 eggs. Our next door neighbors, actually on either side, actually have fertile eggs because they have a laying flock with, in this neighbor's case, 2 roosters that get along well enough. So, like I said, it's a fun project. The downside to this is you don't know what kind of qualities you're exactly going to get in the chicks that come out. I don't know if it showed well on video, but we've got a couple of green eggs in there and then a mix of dark brown, light brown, and white. So what genetics the roosters have, I have no idea. I think the hens were Australorps, White Leghorn, Buff Orpington. There were definitely some reds, either Rhode Island or New Hampshire in there, and then some fancier breeds. And the roosters look mixed. So that means that whatever chicks come out of here, if they turn out to be hens, it's kind of an open question what color eggs you're going to get, what kind of productivity, what kind of body characteristics if you're interested in meat. So I guess the features here consist of a turn timer. The default's 2 hours, that it'll actually rotate the eggs. That's important so the embryo doesn't stick. I've seen much cheaper incubators online that look like clamshells that I think you might even have to rotate by hand. That would be a pain because I don't know if it's mandatory that you do it every 2 hours, but they seem to think that's optimal here. Would not want to have to get up throughout the night to turn chicken eggs. The temperature setting, you can see this has been rising as we've been shooting this because the power was out. Hopefully doesn't impact our hatch rate too badly. The set point for this is 38 degrees Celsius, so that's 100.5 Fahrenheit. There is a range from what I had read that's pretty much the optimal. That is the default setting that came with this, so that's what I used, because honestly, the last run of eggs we ran through here, we got about a 50% hatch rate, which is not too terrible. So it might sound like a lot doing 2 dozen eggs. We're not going to get 2 dozen chickens. Hoping for about a 50% hatch rate, which is pretty good here. I've heard that naturally, under a hen, you might be able to expect 75%. This is not as good. It's a poor imitation of nature. But a dozen hatched would be great. The fact is, we really don't know how many are going to be hens versus roosters. So we could end up with, say we get a dozen eggs to hatch and they all make it, we could end up with 4 hens and 8 roosters. We're really shooting for a pretty small flock. 4 or 5 layers, maybe 6 would be great. And a rooster, although these guys are all potentially siblings, so I'm going to have to get a rooster from somewhere else. This is the day timer. Pretty simple. Like I said, 21 days. What we experienced was you might get an egg or two to start popping on day 20. You might get a couple that will still hatch on day 22. But with our 1 run experience through this process, if you haven't gotten many by day 22, most of those eggs, I don't think we got any. So I let it run for a couple extra days just in case, but it's a pretty specific clock, biologically and for the machine. And then the humidity, they say you want to shoot for between about 70 and 75. There's no water reservoir or anything with this one. We just have to dump water in periodically. Took a little bit to get it set up day 1. Had to add quite a bit of water. I don't think I've added any water to this for about 24 hours. So once you get it set to about 70 to 75, it seems to hold pretty well. And that's it, guys. Not a lot of work. Most of the work with this process is once you get to that day 19, 20, you really have to be free or have somebody in your household free to be checking, because those chicks, they may not need assistance getting out of the shell per se. But like I said, this apparatus rotates. Bad things happen to chicks if you leave them in here unattended. So this is the start of our chicken process. An unintended review of how the generator worked and how to tie it into your main box. So we've got a lot more coming up. It's April 1st, so pretty unusual that we got a severe thunderstorm like we did to knock out power. Get a fair amount of hail and lightning. That's pretty early for us this far north. So over the next couple of weeks, might give you an update on this project if there's anything interesting. And definitely we'll be starting seeds. Going to do a comparison of whether starting seeds on a heat mat versus just doing them on a sunny windowsill indoors makes a difference, because honestly, guys, never used a heat mat, always had pretty good luck just putting them in a sunny windowsill, putting them outside if you get a warm day with the lid on it to make a greenhouse for your seed tray. But seed trays are about seed tray heaters are about $15 on Amazon. Figured it was worth the investment if it potentially increases germination, productivity, and thought it would be good to give you guys a review. So tune back in for more on that and other topics real soon. Thanks, guys.